Hey guys, it's attorney Christy Scott with Lightpath Law down in Fort Myers, Florida. Hope everybody's doing well. I just wanted to hop on and tell you guys about some employment laws that protect you as an employee. So the first employment law I want to talk about is probably the most famous. It's Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So why is this important? Back in the civil rights times, back in the 60s, as you all probably know, in America there was a ton of racial discrimination going on, and employees, specifically those that were minorities, were not being treated fairly. So in the civil rights times, our government passed the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which basically says that people who are minorities and people who are in certain protected classes should be treated fairly in the workplace. And so one thing that's important to know is that this law only applies to certain employers. It doesn't apply to everybody, but it doesn't apply to most employers that have 15 or more employees. And it protects people who are a part of a protected class. So you might be like, what in the world is a protected class? Well, first, of course, race and color are protected classes. In addition, national origin, so that's people that were born outside of the United States. Gender, obviously females. Pregnancy falls under gender, and then also religion. So if you feel like your employer is treating you unfairly based upon one of those protected classes, and your employer is subject to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, then there may be a claim against that employer. So for example, this could be something that happens whenever you're being hired, or maybe if they're trying to reprimand you, or even at the point that you're being terminated. If you feel like, for example, that you have a manager that's treating you unfairly because, let's say, you're a female, they treat all of the males very nicely, but you as a female, they treat you differently. They hold you to a different standard. And as a result, if you believe that that's happening to you, you could have a claim under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Another thing that you should be aware of is that this could be something that is like outright discriminatory. So like, for example, it's what's known as overt and intentional discrimination, which is where, like your employer might even like tell people that, oh, I don't like her because she's pregnant, or every single time that, every time that there's something that comes up, they bring up the fact that you're pregnant, or they bring up the fact that, well, you're the only minority that works here, or, like people who were born in Canada, they feel XYZ, like those types of things are kind of overt and intentional discrimination. But it could also be the fact that maybe, you've done something wrong, like you were late to work, and they're mixing it. It's what's known as mixed motives. Like they're mixing the fact that you were late with the fact that you are, that you're the only person that's a Muslim, for example. So it could be a mix of religion and a qualified reason. And then last but not least, it could be what's called disparate impact, where something that the employer is doing is having a discriminatory effect. So maybe they're making everyone take a certain test, and certain people who are in a protected class don't do well on that particular test. That could also be considered discrimination. I want to hit really quickly on sexual harassment. This is when someone is, maybe asking for sexual favors or using sexual innuendos in the workplace. That is also subject to discrimination laws. If you feel like you're being sexually harassed, you might also be entitled to some sort of a remedy, especially if it is, overt and unwanted, and it makes you feel offended in the workplace. That is protected. Really quickly, I want to talk about the age discrimination as well. The Age Discrimination in Employment Act, which is often referred to as ADEA, protects people who are 40 and older. Believe it or not, I'm protected because I'm 40. But people who are 40 or older are protected. If you feel like you're being treated differently or terminated because of your age, reprimanded because of your age, then that could also be a factor. Or maybe even that you're not being hired and that younger people are being hired. That could also be a cause of action. Those who have disabilities, they are protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And if you have a disability, obviously you should not be treated differently because of your disability. And you may even be able to ask for accommodations in the workplace. If it's a reasonable accommodation, something that your employer can do in order to make it easier for you to function at work, and it's something that's not going to be a huge burden on the employer, those with disabilities can get reasonable accommodations. And I'm winding up, want to talk about the Equal Pay Act. People who perform similar jobs in the workplace should be paid similarly. So if you're female and you're performing the same or highly similar job as a male employee, for example, but you're not being paid at equal pay, then you might be able to get some compensation under the Equal Pay Act. And actually, there was a modification a couple of years ago to this law that basically says that you could challenge each and every paycheck ever received. If it was, the fact that you weren't being paid equally for performing substantially equal work. And that is under something called the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009. Last but not least, I've kind of focused on some federal laws that protect employees, but you should know that there's also state laws that protect employees depending on what state you're in. Here in the state of Florida, we have something known as attorneys refer to it as the Florida Whistleblower Act. That's not technically the name of it, but if you are, just like telling a government entity or letting your employer know that you're going to report them for something that breaks a state law or perhaps a federal law, and your employer retaliates against you, you might be entitled to relief under one of the state whistleblower acts or a federal whistleblower law. And there's also other state anti-discrimination statutes that might apply to you as well. So that's just a quick summary of different laws that protect employees. Hopefully you found that helpful. Check us out at www.lightpathlaw.com to learn more about our firm, and have a good rest of the day.